Welcome to another session of Time with the Superintendent. In our last meeting, we ran over time. We were talking with Rosemary DiTullio, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, about testing. And we know there's a great deal of interest in the community on the issue of testing. So today I've invited Rosemary to come back and so that we can extend our conversation, especially about the MEPS. And then beyond that, what the state might be planning for testing in our future. Let's begin today again, Rosemary, if you just review for us very quickly what the MEPS are.
Okay, well, MEPS stands for the Massachusetts Educational Assessment Program, and it was mandated by the state legislature that this test would be given every other year to students in grades 4, 8, and initially grade 12, but after doing it grade 12 several years, it was decided to move it to grade 10. So for the last 2 sessions, grade 10 students have been tested. And in this test, there are 2 types of questions, multiple choice questions and open-ended questions. And again, it wasn't always that way. Open-ended questions were phased in, and open-ended questions are questions that don't have one set answer. There are many ways you can arrive at the correct answer. Students are given a variety of multiple choice questions and usually a sample of 1 open-ended question per each subject area. Students are tested in social studies, reading, math, and science. And in grade 4, there are 11 forms of the test given, and students get a random sample. In grade 8, 15 forms of the test are used, and in grade 10, 19 forms. And students do not get the same test. It's a random sampling. And as I say, there are some students that will go through our system never having taken the MEP test because they happen to be in the odd year when they're not tested.
Okay. In the recent administration of the MEPS, this last spring, recently we received the results. Again, review quickly, how well did Wakefield do on the MEPS testing?
Okay, well, it's interesting. The MEP test gives 2 scores. One is a scaled score, which is based on a score between 1,000 and 1,600. And when these scores were initially set up, it was determined that about 16% of the schools would fall below the 1,200 range. The bulk, 68%, would fall in the 1,200 to 1,400 range, and that's clearly where Wakefield falls for the most part. And about 16% would fall in the above 1,400 range. At the 4th grade level, we did above the state in every area. We were 30 points above the state in reading. We were even with the state, in math, which is a relative concern. We're looking at other testing to see how we're doing in math and why our math scores aren't quite as high as the other areas. In science, we were 20 points above the state, and in social studies, 30 points. The interesting thing about the questions, 4th grade and throughout, is that our open-ended questions we tend to do very well on. The open-ended questions only count for 30% of the test at this time.
What do the open-ended questions really do, Rosemary? What's their intent?
Well, the intent of the open-ended question is to to see how critically students can think. They have to go through an essay type of question and come up with a solution to the answer, a solution to the problem, in an answer that's readable, understandable, and it shows much more the critical thinking abilities of students.
Okay, going back, how well did we do at grade 8?
Well, in grade 8, the scores were very well, especially in reading. We scored 90 points above the state, math 50 points above the state, science 50 points above the state, and in social studies 90 points above the state. And compared to 1994, we were up in all areas. And if you look at the same students took this exam in grade 4, their scores were consistent with grade 4. They continued to be very good scores. So we're very, very pleased with the 8th grade scores. And the open-ended questions were excellent. In reading, we had a 1490 in open-ended. In math, a 1410 in open-ended. So in social studies, a 1440 in open-ended, clearly at the higher end of the spectrum. When we go to the 10th grade, again, we were above the state average in reading, 20 points, math, 40 points, social studies, 50 points, and science, 70 points. However, we do have some concerns about the reading because the reading score wasn't as high as these students had scored when they were in 8th grade. So when they came to 10th grade, there was a drop-off in the reading, so that's something we want to look at. In terms of the scores from 1994, grade 10, 1996, they really were about the same. And in fact, in a couple of areas in science, they were up from 1994. They
So we
remained
do
quite
have a
relatively
chance
the
then
same.
in these scores to look at this longitudinally.
Yes.
As students
Yes.
come up through the system at different grade levels, we
Right.
can check and see how we've done over a period of years.
Yes, because the students take it in grades 4, 8, and 10, so it's every other year. So you can see in grade 8, 4 years earlier, those students were in grade 4. The 10th grade students, 2 years earlier, you could see what their class did in grade 8. The only thing to watch about that is that it's interesting, even statewide, these are different tests every year. So that even though they may have scored high in 8th grade and their scores are lower in 10th grade, remember it's a different test that they're taking. So you have to keep that in mind as you're comparing the raw scores.
What will you do, Mrs. DiTullio, to use these scores? What will you do with the scores in terms of, quote, a check of the curriculum?
Well, this is exactly what we use the scores for, to check the curriculum, because students do not get individual results with these, so it doesn't help us to remediate an individual student. But we do look at them and say, well, why did our scores go up in a certain area? Or why did they go down? Even if it's only down by 20 points, we want to see, is there a clear-cut reason why? Is it a change in our curriculum? Is it because of what the test is, the questions they're asking? Are they asking certain questions in curriculum areas that we haven't taught yet? Or is it that there's a weakness in that area? So we look at all of those aspects of the exam when we take
Who's
the results.
this we? Who will do that work?
Well, I'll be doing that with the principals of the building. The principals of the building are meeting with the teachers in their building to discuss the various results based on what their building did and what their curriculum. If the curriculum has stayed the same over the last few years, then you have to look and say, okay, is it the same teachers? Has the test changed? Have the student population changed? So there's a number of factors we have to look at.
But there's also a curriculum alignment issue.
Absolutely.
In other words, there's sort of an expectation on the MEPS that there will be certain sequence of exposure to curricula. And we need to be assured that we're teaching the right subject matter that's being tested.
Absolutely.
And if we choose not to do that, then we need also to understand that that may have impact on our scores.
Right, exactly. For instance, in science, oftentimes people teach different aspects of science at different times in the curriculum. If the test happens to come at a certain time, for instance, in 10th grade, when some students have been exposed to biology, others have not, or earth science or electricity or whatever it might be, those scores will obviously reflect that that curriculum hasn't been touched.
The last time you also gave us a brief review of the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, which we also administer, what, grade through grade
Grades
3
3
through
through
8? And we do get individual scores,
Yes.
student scores on that. And parents can expect in the next several months to get individual student scores.
Yes, in fact.
So there is a student interest
Right,
in that
right.
test in terms of their individual
Right.
results.
And the testing for that, we tested grades 5 through 8 in the fall at the middle school, and grades 3 and 4 will be tested in the springtime.
Okay. We understand that this is the last time we'll see results of the MEPS. Ed reform, as outlined in the 1993 legislation, mandated a new assessment program. What can we expect in the future, Rosemary?
Okay, well, again, we assume this will be the last time we see the MEPS. Actually, we weren't supposed to get them in '96, and then the legislature said that we would have one more round of them. So, but if everything goes according to the legislature, a new test called MCAS, which is short for Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, we'll begin using that this springtime. This springtime, there'll be field testing of questions in math and science, again at grades 4, 8, and 10. And when I say field testing, because this is a new examination that they're drawing up, they will send out sample tests to the students to take with a variety of questions. Based on how students answer those, some questions will be kept in and some questions will be dropped or modified when they come up with a new examination. The following year, students again will be tested in math and science. This time we'll get similar results to the MEPS. A year later, we'll have individual results. And that's the big difference with the MCAS test, that this time not only will we get district results, but we'll also get individual students' results as well. These tests are also based on the new curriculum frameworks.
Okay.
They're tied in with the curriculum. So The
So we
test
have
is
a clear definition
the
of
test will
what the
supposed to-
material will be
Right.
that has a relationship to this testing program.
Right. In addition to that, the new MCAS tests are supposed to have 50% of the questions open-ended,
Okay.
which is quite a change from before.
Which will test the higher order thinking
Exactly.
skills as well as the body of knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay. In terms of the new testing program, why at this time only math and science? We certainly have other core curricular areas that we need to be concerned with. Where do those stand?
Well, they have developed 7 curriculum frameworks for 7 subject areas. And right now, the only ones that have been approved by the Board of Education are math and science. And so that's why they're going ahead with that. As the other ones are approved.
Ones, you mean the curriculum frameworks?
Curriculum
yeah.
frameworks. As they are approved, new test and field testing will take place. So within the next few years, the major core subject areas should have field testing and regular testing. As a matter of fact, the state has said that by the year 2001, which is the class of 2003, the 10th graders who are in the class of 2001 will take what we call a high-stakes test in all the areas, and if they do not pass that test, they will not graduate.
So eventually, this testing program will be a mandatory requirement for graduation.
Yes.
Students must pass the test, and they identify that as using this word high stakes.
High stakes, right.
Okay.
And it will be in the major core subject areas of reading, math, science, social studies.
Okay. Again, if the public have questions about either the MEPS or the new testing program, they certainly can contact you. Let's talk for a moment this morning about an issue that's gotten quite a bit of attention in the last several weeks, and that is the State Board of Education has also talked about implementation of the GED testing program, maybe even as early as this school year for seniors. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that expectation might be?
Okay, well, the GED, which is the General Educational Development Test, it's usually given to students who have dropped out of school and allows them to get a high school equivalency.
Okay, right.
At the last Board of Education, at the very last end of the Board of Education, it was suggested that seniors should take that, and it would give us some kind of gauge of how we're doing. It was voted on, and since then, if anyone's read the newspaper, they'll know that this has been a very controversial item. On December 11th, the Board of Education will review their decision and talk about how they're going to implement that. And the latest is that all seniors will be taking it probably in April, and that at this point, there's a question whether they'll have to pass it in order to get the diploma, or whether if they fail it, there would be some indication put on their transcript that they had failed it. But we don't know right now the exact details of the program.
So certainly the administration of that test is quite controversial at this point in time. Are there any reasons why we should be concerned about the GED and the administration of that?
I don't think so, but as any large testing program, we don't know the details of it. So we should wait and see. I'm confident that our students would do well in it, but it's not the kind of test that we usually give. As a matter of fact, it goes contrary to the kind of test that we're currently seeing. Doesn't have open-ended questions, it's all multiple choice, and it's a basic kind of test rather than exploring higher achievement.
School districts like Wakefield were given no prior warning. Students were not warned.
No.
There's been no preparation for the administration of this test. As I understand it, the GED test, there is a forced failure rate that there will be, just because it's a norm reference test. There will be a number of students who will automatically fail just due to the administration of the test. And so we need to be concerned about that. But certainly if the intent is just to give us a preliminary review of particular areas of strength and weakness, then we need to look positively at that. We do need all the indicators that we can get to identify relative strength and weakness, and certainly to then work with teachers and principals to make sure that those areas of relative weakness are remediated, that we correct that, so that we can deliver to the town of Wakefield a better product, that every child graduating from Wakefield can not only pass the GEDs, but the new assessments and get on with their life. Again, Mrs. DiTullio, I appreciate you taking this extra time to join us. Welcome to the community to interact with you and call you to get further detail. Our next time with the superintendent, we hope to do some work on the issue of our technology plan. We do know there's a lot of interest in the community on that. So our next time, we'll focus on the technology. And with that, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.